Imagine a weapon that arrives before its own sound. A weapon that strikes with such blinding velocity, the first sign of attack is the explosion itself. There is no warning siren. There is no time to run for cover. There is no interceptor missile screaming into the sky to meet it. This is not science fiction. This is the stark, terrifying reality of modern warfare, a new chapter written in the language of hypersonic speed. For decades, the world's superpowers built their defenses on a simple principle. You can't hit what you can't see, and you can stop what you can track. But what happens when a weapon moves too fast to track too erratically to predict too low to be seen by the old sentinels in the sky? The answer is simple, and it keeps generals in Washington and Brussels awake at night. The strategic balance that has, however precariously, kept the peace since the end of the Cold War is now teetering on a knife's edge. This precarious stability was built upon the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, or MAD. The idea was that a nuclear first strike would be met with an overwhelming retaliatory strike, ensuring that no one could ever truly win such a war. This doctrine relied entirely on early warning systems. Satellites in geosynchronous orbit, powerful ground-based radar arrays, all designed to give a nation precious minutes to confirm an attack and launch a response. But hypersonic weapons tear that doctrine to shreds. At the heart of Russia's strategic gambit are three distinct yet equally formidable weapon systems. They are the Kinzhal, the Avangard, and the Zircon. Each is designed for a different purpose, but they all share one defining characteristic: terrifying speed. The first of this trinity is the Ki-47M2 Kinzhal, which translates to dagger. It is an air-launched ballistic missile, typically carried by a modified MiG-31K fighter jet or a Tu-22M3 bomber. Once released at high altitude, the Kinzhal accelerates to speeds of up to Mach 10, or roughly 7,600 miles per hour. Its purpose is clear: to strike high-value targets like aircraft carriers, command centers, and critical infrastructure with such velocity that defensive systems have no time to react. The Kinzhal is a battlefield game-changer, capable of holding entire naval fleets at risk from hundreds of miles away. Then, there is the Avangard, a weapon that seems pulled from the pages of a dystopian novel. The Avangard is not a missile itself, but a hypersonic glide vehicle. It is launched atop a traditional intercontinental ballistic missile, like the new RS-28 Sarmat. After reaching the upper atmosphere, the Avangard detaches and begins its descent, gliding towards its target at speeds that have been reported to exceed Mach 20 or over 15,000 miles per hour. What makes the Avangard a strategic nightmare is not just its sheer speed, but its ability to perform sharp, evasive maneuvers on its way down. It can jink and weave through the atmosphere, making its flight path utterly unpredictable. It is a nuclear-capable delivery system designed to penetrate the most sophisticated missile defense shields in the world. The third jewel in this crown of hypersonic terror is the 3M22 Zircon. This is a sea-launched hypersonic cruise missile designed to be fired from Russian frigates, corvettes, and submarines. While its publicly stated speed is around Mach 8 to Mach 9, approximately 6,000 to 7,000 miles per hour. What makes the Zircon so dangerous is its flight profile. The term hypersonic is often used, but its true implications are rarely understood. It means moving at speeds of Mach 5 or greater, 5 times the speed of sound. At sea level, that's approximately 3,800 miles per hour, or more than a mile per second. The Russian weapons we've discussed operate far beyond this minimum threshold. The Kinzhal at Mach 10 travels at 2 miles per second. The Avangard at Mach 20 is moving at 4 miles per second. The distance between Moscow and Washington, D.C. can be covered in under 15 minutes by an Avangard glide vehicle. This compression of time and space is what fundamentally breaks modern defense strategies. It's not just about being fast, it's about being too fast for humans or computers to react. The sheer kinetic energy of these weapons adds another layer of terror. In some cases, the destructive power from the impact alone is enough to obliterate a target, even without a conventional explosive warhead. A Zircon missile striking a warship at Mach 8 delivers a catastrophic blow that can tear through hardened steel hulls as if they were paper. This means that even if the warhead is a dud, the impact itself is a weapon. Furthermore, the intense heat generated by air friction at these speeds, creating a plasma sheath around the missile, poses its own set of challenges for designers and trackers. This incredible speed, combined with maneuverability, is the key to their invincibility. A traditional ballistic missile flies in a high, predictable arc, like a thrown ball. Missile defense systems are designed to calculate this arc and position an interceptor in its path. But a hypersonic weapon like the Avangard doesn't play by these rules. It can change direction mid-flight, making any pre-calculated intercept point instantly obsolete. It's like trying to shoot a bullet that can dodge. For defense systems, this is an impossible computational problem. By the time the weapon's new trajectory is calculated, it has already changed course again. To understand why hypersonic missiles are so difficult to stop, you have to understand how modern air defense works. It is a layered system, a chain of detection and engagement. The first link in that chain is detection. This is primarily handled by powerful early warning radars and space-based infrared sensors. Radars scan the horizon, while satellites look for the intense heat bloom of a missile launch. However, both of these systems have critical weaknesses when it comes to hypersonics. Ground-based radar is limited by the curvature of the Earth. A low-flying hypersonic cruise missile like the Zircon can stay below the radar horizon for most of its flight, only popping into view when it is seconds from its target. This is known as the sea skimming profile, and it is brutally effective. Even the space-based sensors, our eyes in the sky, are at a disadvantage. While they can detect the initial launch of the intercontinental ballistic missile carrying an Avangard glide vehicle, they struggle to track the glide vehicle itself once it separates. The Avangard flies much lower than a traditional ballistic warhead in the upper reaches of the atmosphere. This depressed trajectory makes it harder for satellites looking down to track it against the background heat of the Earth. Furthermore, the plasma that forms around the vehicle as it screams through the air can absorb radar waves, effectively making it a stealth object for certain types of sensors. It becomes a ghost in the machine, a phantom that is there one moment and gone the next, its path a mystery. The second link in the defense chain is tracking and interception. Once a threat is detected, its trajectory must be precisely calculated so an interceptor can be launched to meet it. Systems like the US ground-based mid-course defense are designed to hit a bullet with another bullet in the vacuum of space. The arrival of Russia's operational hypersonic arsenal has, really sent a palpable wave of panic through the halls of NATO headquarters in Brussels. For years, the alliance's military strategy in Europe has, been predicated on technological superiority. NATO forces might be outnumbered in a conventional conflict with Russia, but they believed their advanced aircraft, smart munitions, and integrated air defenses would carry the day. This assumption has, been shattered. War games and simulations over the past few years have produced grim, consistent results. When Russia's hypersonic capabilities are factored in, key NATO assets, command centers, air bases, and naval fleets are eliminated in the opening minutes. One particularly sobering exercise simulated a Russian response to a NATO buildup in the Baltic states. The scenario began with a coordinated strike by Kinzhal missiles and Zircon missiles. Bremerhaven, a critical U.S. logistics port, was rendered inoperable. Ramstein Air Base was hit. A U.S. aircraft carrier group in the North Sea was neutralized. The attacks happened so quickly and precisely that NATO's command and control was decapitated before it could respond. The war game was stopped. The outcome already brutally clear. Political and military leaders are now grappling with a stark reality. General Todd D. Walters testified in 2021 in uncharacteristic bluntness. He warned of the destabilizing nature of these weapons and the challenge to NATO's ability to deter. Behind the diplomatic language, NATO's shield has a hole, and Russia is holding the spear. The alliance's defensive posture, relying on reinforcing the eastern flank, is in question. How can you reinforce a position if your ports, airfields, and supply lines can be destroyed at a moment's notice? This has forced a frantic, expensive scramble to develop a counter. The United States, its allies, are pouring billions into hypersonic research to catch up after years of complacency. They're also exploring new defensive concepts like a space-based sensor layer and hundreds of small satellites to create a more resilient tracking network. But these solutions are years, if not a decade, away from being fielded. In the meantime, a dangerous window of vulnerability exists. Russia enjoys what strategists call escalation dominance. Moscow knows it holds a trump card that the West cannot counter, giving it immense leverage to dictate terms without firing a shot. Inside the five-sided walls of the Pentagon, the mood regarding Russia's hypersonic capabilities has shifted from professional concern to outright alarm. For years, the official United States position was one of confidence in its layered defense systems. But as intelligence reports and satellite imagery confirmed the deployment of systems like the Avangard, that confidence began to erode. The turning point came in a series of classified briefings, Joint Chiefs of Staff, congressional leaders. According to leaked excerpts and insider accounts, these briefings painted a picture of a profound strategic imbalance. General John Hyten, then vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, publicly stated that the speed and maneuverability of these weapons presented a significant challenge for which the United States had no adequate defense. The details in those closed-door sessions were even more stark. One briefing slide, allegedly leaked from a Defense Intelligence Agency report, showed the projected flight path of an Avangard glide vehicle. Unlike the smooth, predictable arc of an ICBM, the Avangard's path was a jagged line, erratic line showing multiple course corrections as it re-entered the atmosphere. The presenter reportedly stated, "We cannot see it until its terminal phase, and we cannot stop it." This admission, made in the secure confines of a sensitive compartmented information facility, confirmed the worst fears of the American defense establishment. The nation that had spent $1 trillion on missile defense since the Reagan era was now defenseless against this new class of weapon. This has triggered a quiet but intense debate within the Department of Defense about the future of strategic deterrence. Some factions argue for an accelerated push to develop and deploy America's own hypersonic weapons to create a symmetric threat, restoring the balance of terror. Others warn this will only lead to a more dangerous and unstable arms race, where automated launch-on-warning systems become the norm, dramatically increasing the risk of an accidental nuclear war. The United States has had several high-profile test failures with its own hypersonic prototypes, highlighting the immense technical difficulty and suggesting that catching up to Russia will be neither quick nor easy. This public struggle stands in stark contrast to Russia's successful operational deployments. The most chilling acknowledgement came from General Mark Milley, then chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In a now famous remark, he described a Chinese hypersonic test as a near Sputnik moment. While he was referring to China, the implication was clear for Russia's more advanced and deployed arsenal. The Sputnik moment was the 1957 event when the Soviet Union's satellite launch shocked the United States, revealing a technological gap that was thought to be impossible. Milley's comment was a public admission that the United States was once again technologically behind a strategic rival in a critical area of military competition. For the Pentagon, it was a confession that the unthinkable had happened. America had been outpaced, and its homeland was vulnerable in a way it had not been for generations. The seemingly sudden emergence of Russia's hypersonic arsenal is not the result of a recent breakthrough. It is the culmination of decades of focused research born inside secretive Soviet scientific institutes. During the Cold War, the United States poured money into stealth aircraft precision-guided munitions, while Soviet scientists obsessed over speed. They accepted they couldn't match US electronics or stealth coatings, so they pursued an asymmetric path, raw velocity rocketry. The seeds of Kinzhal Avangard Zircon were planted in the 1970s and 1980s. Soviet researchers advanced high-temperature materials, scienced scramjet propulsion plasma aerodynamics. They pioneered exotic metal alloys, carbon composites, to survive hypersonic heat and pressure. After 1991, many programs were starved of funding, but the core science stayed intact. Blueprint's research data veteran scientists remained. When Vladimir Putin returned military focus, he found dormant hypersonic research ready to revive. One key program was Albatross. It was a direct precursor to Avangard. Test flights were run, data gathered on the challenges of controlling a vehicle at Mach 20. Work on high-speed anti-ship missiles aimed at U.S. carrier groups laid groundwork for Zircon. The Soviets figured sinking a carrier leveled the naval field, and that a missile too fast to shoot down was the answer. Kinzhal builds on the Iskander's short-range ballistic missile, adapted for air launch to extend range and unpredictability. This long history gives Russia a deep advantage. The US largely shelved hypersonic work after the Cold War to focus on counterinsurgency and precision warfare, while Russian institutes quietly refined theories, even with minimal funding. When money and will returned in the 2000s, Russia leapfrogged a generation. This is not a sudden invention. It is a Cold War ghost materializing on today's battlefield, more dangerous than imagined. The deployment of these hypersonic weapons is not just a military development. It is a profound geopolitical event, reshaping the global chessboard. It signals a shift away from the unipolar moment the United States enjoyed after the Cold War and toward a more contentious multipolar world. Russia, by fielding a capability the United States cannot defend against, has fundamentally altered the power dynamic. It has created an anti-access/area denial bubble stretching thousands of miles from its borders. Within this bubble, any US or NATO military asset, whether on land, at sea, in the air, is perpetually at risk of a swift, unstoppable attack. American planners must operate from much farther away, complicating logistics and blunting power projection. This gives Russia immense coercive power in its near abroad. On NATO's eastern flank, Poland, the Baltic states feel the alliance's guarantee grow less certain. In a crisis, help from the US and Western Europe could be delayed or denied by the threat of hypersonic strikes on key ports and airfields. That could embolden Russia to apply greater political and military pressure. Confident NATO would hesitate to risk a direct confrontation it might lose early. The hypersonic arsenal is a strategic enabler for Russia's foreign policy. The impact goes far beyond Europe. Hypersonics are now a symbol of great power status, separating the haves from the have-nots. Russia and China lead in deployed systems, while the United States plays catch-up. That creates dangerous instability. The US, feeling vulnerable, might take preemptive action. Russia and China, feeling confident, might push boundaries. These weapons raise the stakes, making miscalculation and rapid escalation more likely. The world is more dangerous simply because they exist. The technology is proliferating. Beyond Russia and China, India, France, and Japan are developing hypersonic programs. Widespread adoption raises the risk of proliferation to rogue states or non-state actors. The nightmare: many countries with unstoppable, potentially nuclear-capable missiles. Old arms control treaties, meant for ballistic missiles and bombers, are inadequate. A new strategic framework is desperately needed, but prospects are bleak amid distrust and competition. The chessboard has been remade. The new rules are unwritten and terrifying. We are now living in a new and perilous age. An age where the buffer of time, the precious minutes that once separated peace from global cataclysm, has been erased. The advent of hypersonic weapons means that a major conflict could begin, not with a formal declaration of war, not with troop movements or diplomatic ultimatums, but with a silent, unseen launch. The first indication that a war has started could be the simultaneous destruction of the Pentagon, NATO headquarters in Brussels, and the command ships of the United States Pacific Fleet. It would be a decapitation strike so swift and so complete that there would be no one left to order a retaliation. This is the specter of the zero-minute war. The logic of deterrence that held the Cold War in check was built on a shared understanding of vulnerability. The United States and the Soviet Union both knew that if they launched a first strike, they would suffer a devastating counterstrike. This mutual vulnerability created a stable, if terrifying, peace. Russia's hypersonic arsenal threatens to upend that logic. By creating a weapon that is perceived as unstoppable, the Kremlin may believe it has escaped the bonds of mutual destruction. In a moment of extreme crisis, a Russian leader might be tempted to use these weapons to achieve a swift victory, gambling that their adversary will be too crippled to respond effectively. It is a gamble on which the fate of the world rests. This is not a distant threat. It is not a hypothetical scenario. The Kinzhal has already been used in combat in Ukraine. The Avangard is on active combat duty with Russia's strategic rocket forces. The Zircon is being fitted to the newest Russian warships and submarines. These are not paper tigers. They are deployed weapons, integrated into Russia's military doctrine and ready to be used. As tensions between Russia and the West continue to simmer, every flashpoint from the Baltics to the Black Sea now carries with it the added risk of a conflict that could escalate at hypersonic speed. The margin for error has shrunk to zero. The final chilling warning is this: the shield we have trusted for generations is broken. Our warning systems, our interceptor missiles, our entire concept of defense is based on a threat that no longer represents the cutting edge of warfare. We are facing a weapon that moves faster than our ability to react, a strike that arrives without warning. Until the United States and its allies can develop a credible defense or a symmetrical deterrent, we will live under the shadow of this hypersonic nightmare. A war could begin and end before we even know it has happened. The countdown has already begun, and the clock is ticking faster than ever before.